Everybody to our June forum. I'll turn it over to Melina to host this in just a moment, but first I'll say, please type in questions, any questions that you have into your questions box on your GoToWebinar control panel, and Lori and I will be monitoring those, and we can ask questions to those that are presenting and to the panel. Please go ahead and type them in as they occur to you so we can organize them and get them ready. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Melina.
Great, thanks, Brett. Hey, everyone. I'm Melina Hale. I'm this year's and next year's president of SICB. First, thank you so much for coming to the forum. We've committed to do them regularly through the year. So we had one in the spring. The next one will be later in the summer, and then another one in the fall, we think. We hope your summer is off to a really good start. With the decreasing COVID restrictions, we're all able to have a little more fun, I hope. June has been a time of really important reflection and advocacy, the celebration and continuing hard work toward equal opportunities and equality and justice of Pride Month. And now, very excitingly in the US, the overdue recognition of Juneteenth has all been just exciting and wonderful to see this month. So before we get started, let's do a quick round of officer introductions. So I'll call off people so we avoid that who goes next issue. And I'll start with Patricia.
Hi, everyone. Patricia Hernandez. I am the president-elect.
Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Brainerd. I am the past president.
Jake.
Hi, I'm Jake Soha. I am the program officer.
Tom.
Tom Sanger. I am program officer elect.
Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Johnson. I'm the secretary.
And Molly. I saw you pop in.
Hi, I'm Molly Jacobs. I'm the communications editor.
Great. And then from Burke Inc., we have Lori.
Hi, Lori Strong. I'm your meetings person.
And Brett.
Hi, I'm Brett Burke. I'm your executive director.
Thank you. And not with us today is Miriam Ashley Ross, who's the treasurer and does a ton of work for the society as well. So our agenda today is really three big topics that we know people are interested in. The first is the annual meeting planning for 2022. In a few minutes, I'll hand over to Jake for that. Jake will do a presentation and then we'll do some Q&A right afterwards. So again, put your questions in chat or feel free to raise them later. After that section of the agenda, we'll turn to Michelle, who has a quick item on changes to bylaws that will be voted on this summer. We want to try to get a great vote out and make sure you're aware of what's going on there. And then also Molly is going to present some on the new and almost launched SICB website, which we're all very excited about. And she and Lou and others have put, Lou Burnett and others have put a ton of work into. So, so annual meeting planning. Before handing over to our program officer, just a few sort of organization level issues that I wanted to make sure are upfront as we go into the conversation. First, we've heard a lot of great input on the value of the virtual engagement and how important that is for a number of reasons, from accessibility to climate concerns beyond the pandemic, in addition to the issues that came up this past year in particular. As we think forward to adopt some of the practices we've been able to try and that have evolved very quickly over the last year, there are a number of constraints that we have to work with. And so we're really thinking about what virtual components or virtual engagement might look like as a multi-year process, and we'll try to build and experiment and think creatively and grow it as we learn more and as we feel that we're able to do something really good for the society. In addition, there are constraints that are always going to be a problem, at least as we're set up now. First of all is bandwidth of people. Planning the in-person meeting for the management company as well as for executive officers is a lot. And so layering on virtual elements of a meeting on top of that, is a lot more work, and we have to be respectful of people's time. In addition, we contract with venues many years in advance of a meeting. So, we can't, for example, this year set expectations for the venue that we're using in January. So we'll have to take some time to figure out what we really need out of venues that we'll be contracting with in the coming years, and think carefully about how to work within the constraints of the ones that are now we're committed to for the next few years. Related to that, some conference centers don't, have great virtual capabilities right now, or you can buy separate packages that are very expensive. So in addition to, thinking about the quality of any type of virtual component associated with our annual meeting, we also have to think in a fiscally responsible way about what that cost would look like, what can be borne by registration fees, what the institution, the organization would have to supplement, and just be thoughtful and careful about that for SICB. So lots of different things that we're trying to manage now as we think forward for this year and also for the coming years. The surveys that so many people completed in the spring were really important and are very informative as we think forward. I think Jake will talk a little bit more. So I hope you can be patient and understand that we're doing some piloting, that we're trying things out. We want to learn from this meeting and continue to grow and improve. We're really going into things with a spirit of experimentation, and as experimental biologists, that's natural, and some experiments work better than others. So we're trying our best and want your input. And also, again, hope that you'll be understanding of all of the different issues here. So I think with that, I will go ahead and turn over to Jake.
Okay, Jake, it should prompt you to share your screen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Melina. So first thing I want to say, I'm not sure everyone knows, we are going to have an in-person conference in 2022, and that is fantastic. What we're talking about here is plans for adding a virtual component. Some of the reasons for that is that this past year we held the conference virtually. We think it went as well as it possibly could have gone under the circumstances. We learned a lot, and we want to take some things from that experience and use it to build and improve our conference. We don't think that there's ever going to be a full return to normal, and we know that there's a new reality of conferences. So in the spirit of trying to improve, as Melina said, I want to reemphasize that this is a spirit of experimentation in expanding for SICB 2022 and beyond. Now, before we talk about details, we want everyone to understand kind of what goes on behind the scenes, and that planning a typical pre-pandemic in-person meeting is a lot of work, and that's both for the SICB volunteers who put this together and the BAI staff. And our SICB volunteers are all unpaid, just so you guys are fully aware. And so adding anything to the normal in-person conference will involve even more work, and we're going to have to distribute this work amongst those folks. So for the SICB folks, that involves the program officers and the division program officers and other people as well. There's a lot of people that contribute to putting things together. And so the added load and any associated labor-related expense in real dollars is a consideration in planning how we expand in the coming years. Okay, so in deciding where to focus our efforts, because we're recognizing that our efforts are limited, we asked the question, what do attendees value the most in an in-person conference? So number one, we think, first and foremost, experiencing new science, but then, the personal things matter quite a lot. So interacting with colleagues, and then forming new relationships. Those three things we think are the things that people really value in going to an in-person conference. And then fourth on this, I put attending meetings, and I would call this a smaller subset, those who are a bit more engaged in the society. But for the typical conference goer, this is not the major, not the major thing. Okay, so in our experience last year with the virtual conference, we learned that 2 and 3, the interpersonal things, are difficult to do virtually, and we think that we really can't replicate this in-person experience virtually. However, number 1 and number 4, so experiencing new science and attending meetings, these are more amenable to virtual delivery. So therefore, we think that we should focus on number 1 and number 4, experiencing new science and attending meetings, and not attempt to do 2 and 3 virtual as we are deciding where to expand. Okay, so some rationale for why we think adding virtual component to our regular in-person meeting is worthwhile. So the biggest thing is that if we do so, our conference and our society can reach a global audience that will vastly expand access and equitability. And we really think that is the big key message and the big important point. Secondary to that is that some of our regular attendees might not be able to attend in person for myriad reasons, particularly this year related to COVID. But there's also a desire to reduce environmental impact. Right. And then lastly, this is sort of an ancillary thing. If we have virtual content, it means that attendees who come in person could potentially revisit things after they leave the conference. Say they missed a talk or didn't realize a talk was going on or wanted to see something, they can now have this afterwards. So we think that this is sort of a bonus to having virtual component. Okay, so now the next question is, how are we actually going to deliver virtual content from the in-person conference attendees? And I'm distinguishing that because we'll have a second group of people who are only are purely virtual. Okay, so for the in-person conference attendees, we are going to ask presenters to provide a recorded video after the conference. Now, this will be not required, so this will not be required. It will be opt-in. And the reason that we're doing this is that we realize that some people are not going to want to either do the extra work, or they think that their material is sensitive, or some other reason. We want people to buy in for the reasons that we presented below and to have that be organic. Now, we do acknowledge that this will be extra work for presenters, some extra work. You already have the presentation there. Many of us have experience putting these together, and we have explicit instructions, but we do acknowledge that it will be extra work. And I would like to point out from our survey, so we asked if SICB were to implement a virtual component and you attended in person, would you be willing to provide your talk or poster electronically? And we did say that this would entail recording the presentation separately before or after the conference. Our number here is 87%, which I have up there in the corner. Of these participants said they would be willing to provide their talk or poster electronically, and that was 463 people. So that was a really, really strong support for this idea. So we are hoping that we will have a large buy-in to doing this. Now for posters, that would require providing the PDF file for the poster, which you have anyway, because that's what you make, right? You turn your PowerPoint or whatever your file is into PDF is straightforward. You can also provide supplementary files if so desired, but they're not required. And so we think the amount of extra work here for presenters would be minimal. And again, like the talks, this is not required, it is opt-in. And then a few more things. Workshops, we would like to record and or potentially stream them. That's still debatable if the leader of the workshop agrees, and post these with the other content if that is possible. For meetings, where possible, we would like to use Zoom or some other mechanism to bring members in to attend in real time. And then lastly, for plenaries and society-wide business meeting, the society-wide business meeting, we are considering live streaming options as an experiment. Exactly how we do this and if we do this is still up in the air, but we would like to trial this for the upcoming conference. Okay, so that was in-person folks. There's also a group of people who would be virtual only. So say you can't attend or you're overseas or something and it's too costly, you can still access the virtual content and you can participate as well. So for those folks, they will provide a recorded video after the conference for the talks like the others. And the deadline here being after the conference is to prevent confusion. We don't want people to think that if they give their virtual only file that we're going to show it in the in-person conference during those regular sessions, because we're not going to do that. For posters, again, it's the same. You just provide the PDF file and supplementary files. Now, for both these talks and posters that are virtual only, we would put them in two places. So with the virtual content, we'd weave them into the appropriate sessions afterwards so that they are integrated in with that technical content. And then we would have another page that lists all the virtual only presentations so that if you're there in person and you come back home and you want to figure out what's new, you can easily just go search for what's new. Let's talk about limits. So in person, we're not going to change anything from our previous pre-pandemic limits, which is one talk and one poster per presenter. And the reason for this is a limit of time and space that we have to deal with. For the virtual component, we now see no reason to limit presentations. So if you want to give 5 talks, knock yourself out. You can put those all online, and that applies to everyone. So virtual only, but also if you're in person and you want to give more online, go for it. Okay, now we do have a limit about switching. So if you're going there in person and you decide at the last minute, hey, I don't want to give my talk in person, I'm just going to pop it up in the virtual component. We are not going to allow people to do that. And the reason is that we have to put the schedule together. We have to program everything in advance, and I'll show you a little bit of that in a second. And that throws some wrenches in our works. We will consider hardship on a case-by-case basis, but our rule overall is we won't allow this. Okay, so let's talk about the release of the content. So again, like I said, everything will be posted after the conference is complete. And now, how long is it up there? We haven't decided. We actually would like to get some feedback on this, but the content will be available for a limited time only. Okay, and then at the end of that time, it then gets pulled down and is gone forever. And the exact date of release, or when this starts, is after the conference. But whether that's 1 day or 2 days or 3, we have not decided yet. We need to work out that technical detail. All right, so let me give you a timeline of what's going on. After this forum here, we are going to announce the conference format and open up the abstract submission. And so, we would like you to help spread the word that we are going to be in person, but there's also a virtual option if that is needed or desired. September 1st, abstracts are due, and that is both standard and virtual only presentation. So everything is due on September 1st. And that's our typical deadline from previous years as well. Now, once we collect everything, September 25th, 26th, our program committee will build the program. So this is one of the reasons why we need everything in advance to put everything together. November 5th, the registration will be due for presenters. On December 1st, the registration is due for everyone else. And then lastly, on the 9th is when we aim to release the final program to the public. All right, the last thing I want to mention is registration. So we are going to have tiers of registration. So there's regular in-person registration, which will include the virtual content. So if you go to the in-person conference, obviously you get access to everything that's on demand afterwards. The price for this will be similar to our pre-pandemic pricing, and the reason it will be similar is because we are only going to include the in-person factors when we calculate what the registration needs to be. And as always, our aim is to break even. Okay, we are not trying to generate revenue from our registration. And this is one of the right reasons why our conference costs are so low compared to many other conferences. Next is the new thing, which is the virtual component only. So if you're doing virtual only, we think that the price you pay should be less than if you go in person, because you're not going to get the full conference experience. This is not a hybrid conference. You should not expect to be getting everything. You get a bunch of things, and it's great, but it's definitely not the same thing, and so it will cost less. And we still need to figure out what that value will be. And then lastly, if you are attending meetings only, and I have question marks there about committee meetings or division meetings and what exactly we can do, we will not charge people for that. So we're not going to make you register for the conference simply to come sit on a committee and do service for our society. We think that should be free. So with that, I think that is the end, and I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, we have a couple of really good ones so far, but please keep typing in your questions as you have them. The first one I'm going to ask is from Samantha Gartner, and it says, "Will registering for the in-person meeting cover the viewing of talks after the conference?"
Yes.
Yeah. That one's a short answer. Yes, right. So here's a slightly longer question, and I might start to answer it, and then I'll turn it over to you, Jake. It says, this is from Jason Bork. It says, "Many or most conference hotels have a suitable AV setup that would allow for recording of the sessions without requiring presenters to do any extra work. It can still be opt-in that presenters need to provide the okay to show their work. This would seem to allow the most consistent flow and quality for a virtual session rather than relying on presenters to record their own." Mm-hmm. And I'll start it off by saying the issue is largely one of cost scalability with so many concurrent sessions and so many different computers being used for the presentations. But Jake, what would you like to add to that, or Lori?
Sure. And you know, I would like to note that the current SICB president and the past president both asked me to address issues of why we weren't doing certain things, and of course I skipped that in my presentation. So my apologies to both of you. So we have discussed things like this, and we also, you know, we thought about things like, can we stream a bunch of, like, the symposia, for instance. The issue with both the recording and streaming is that we looked into it, and the costs are actually fairly large. And so we thought that it would be prohibitive. We'd have to actually ask people to increase the registration quite a lot. And so we did not want to go after that option this year. But yes, it was something that we considered, just doing it on site. I will say this, though, that if you want to record your voice and you have your iPhone there and you know, or your smartphone, and you record yourself, you can use that audio. You know, you have it there. You just now need to produce the video. We will provide instructions for this, and hopefully it will not be too onerous. But the other thing with recording on site there as well is that you know, sometimes there are other sounds going on and other issues that crop up.
Lori.
Can I pop in? And there's also to be considered if you're recording a whole session, which we would be doing, it would be the whole session. So each person getting up. If speaker number 2 is opting out, then the kind of pulling that all together, taking that out before we post it and all that kind of thing, there's more room for error.
Right. It's just an incredible amount. It's just logistically difficult. Yeah. So the next question is from Tim Hagum, and I think this will give you an opportunity to clarify a point. It says, will speakers in a symposium also have the virtual option? If 2 to 3 speakers do this, we could then fill in those spots with the in-person complementary session speakers. And so, Jake, do you want to talk about virtual presenters?
So Tim, you're talking about having the symposium speakers be virtual only, and so having the symposium be shorter. I think that's something that maybe you and I can talk about afterwards. I don't have a good answer for you right now. Sorry.
Let's see. So the next one is from Sarah O'Brien. It says, this all sounds great. Thank you. Could you send those dates and a short synopsis of meeting attending dynamics to all program officers? I need to print this out and or tattoo it to the inside of my eyeballs. So
the answer is yes. We were planning on releasing information after this forum, but we also wanted to get feedback from all of you that might help to inform what we were going to release publicly. So hold tight on that, and I will send out information very shortly, and we'll be putting out public messages too.
Great. The next one is from Maya Enriquez. It says, thank you for taking questions. Will the in-person meeting have gender-neutral bathrooms available for the conference participants?
Yes, it will.
And Lori, did you want to talk about some of the other, like the pods that we're putting up and things like that as well?
Yeah, we have we'll have gender neutral bathrooms where our space is. That'll be obviously identified. We'll have nursing pods for people that need to do that. We'll have a quiet room that people can just kind of go sit off to the side, relax if it's just too much around them and too noisy or that kind of thing, if they just want to take a little break time.
Great. The next one is from John Harrison. Hi, John. It says, can you talk about how you will figure out what the registration charge will be for the virtual registrants?
Brett, I think that's a you question.
Yeah, so the answer is we have to figure out what kind of content management structure we're going to use and what the costs will be that are associated with that so that we can set, and then we have to do a little guessing about how many people will pick that option so that we can try to make that a break-even component of the meeting as well. So we'll be doing that over the course of the summer and trying to figure that piece out.
But Brett, we had agreed that we were not going to calculate that into the registration cost for this year, correct?
For the in-person meeting component, right? Is that what you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
And we also built a little contingency into the budget so that we can do this even if, trying to divide it among virtual participants would be too high. So.
Yeah, I think the officers have recognized that this is something that we need to do, want to do, and that there's some risk associated with it, but we're fortunate in the position that we can take some risk if we need to. The next one says, have you considered asking student volunteers / workers to record live talks? These live recordings could be used as the virtual component with an opt-out option for people who do not want their work added to the virtual format. So
we did consider that, yeah. Go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say, yes, that is where we started. We started with, let's do that. But the complications associated with, again, multiple computers, in other words, people using their own computers for their presentations, the number of concurrent sessions, the training that would be necessary, and the costs at this particular facility for the AV and for the internet pieces made it unreasonable to do for the whole conference, but we are planning to do a little bit of that as a pilot program. So sort of stay tuned. We're going to try to do that for some sessions to see what we can learn and see what will be sustainable for future meetings.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you know, I think that puts a lot of pressure on the students, right? You're recording someone else's presentation. If you screw something up, that person might be very unhappy, and you're like, hey, I'm just a student volunteer who's trying my best. We would rather put the presentation in the hands of the presenter, because they can control the quality of what they will post online.
So we have a few more questions. First off, that was Rosario. She just said, thank you very much for your response. So the next one is from Nathan Bird. It says, we are still in flux with COVID and the Delta variant, and so the possibility of new surges is still possible. So does SICB have plans to enforce mitigation methods, masks, distance, if things increase before the meeting? And so I don't think we as the officers haven't talked in detail about that, but Lori and I have worked with the facilities on that a bit. But go ahead, Jake, you look like you're about to say something.
I would just, simple answer is we will. We don't have that plan in place right now, but we will.
Yeah, we will follow CDC guidelines, certainly, and the guidelines for Phoenix, where we are exactly, which have been pretty strict. So we are working with that, and we're looking at some options for testing and those kind of things that can be done easily through as people are coming in, kind of some self-regulation.
Yeah, Lori had a mini demonstration on one of those apps just today, in fact. Next one's from Marianne Porter. It says, feedback. This is awesome. I know the world is going back to normal, in quotes, for vaccinated people, but for people with small kids or those who cannot be vaccinated, new normals are still not here. This flexibility will be useful to so many members. Thank you all. So that's encouraging. We've had a lot of discussions about this, and it's great to hear that it's going to be helpful for some. We have just one more. John Harrison said, will there be ways for virtual presenters to get feedback via chat, for example?
Yes. In fact, if we use the same platform that we used last year, the look and feel should be very, very similar. And we have that function. The thing that we didn't like, and that we got a lot of feedback on as well, is that there were no notifications that went out to people when they got feedback through chat. And that has not been improved, at least through that company. So it might just be a limitation. And we are begging for them to do that, but we can't. If we use them, we can't guarantee that we will have that. We would love that though. But yes, there is that mechanism there.
Great. I don't see any other questions for this section.
And Brett, I want to make one last comment. I want to float this out there. I've only said to Melina, this could be called SICB on demand. So SICB OD. So what is this component? It's on demand. I'm just floating this out there to see if people what they think of that. So
yeah. So type in your answers what you think of SICB OD.
It nice differentiates it from setting an expectation of the sort of
hybrid conference,
different meetings components together. Yeah. So
well, Jason Bork likes it. That's all we know so far. Great.
Well, I think next on our agenda is Michelle. Oh, one more.
Sorry, one more comment. We've had several people actually at the same time suggest that we be like Disney and call it SICB Plus.
There we go.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Great. Michelle.
Hi, everybody. So behind the scenes at SICB, we've had a lot of work going on these last few months, looking at the Constitution and bylaws and updating them to reflect current practice, to move us forward in some directions. And I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on what you're going to see very soon, because as the new website is rolled out, which Molly will talk about next, we will also have posted on the new website a series of amendments, proposed amendments to the bylaws and the Constitution. So for the SICB-wide Constitution, there's 4 main areas that we are working to improve with the proposed amendments. One is to establish the position of communications editor as a formal position on the executive committee. Molly is our first communications editor. She's been doing this work for some months now, and our Constitution needs to recognize that that is a position in our group. This is an appointed position. It's a part-time position, and it has a modest stipend. And so provisions for providing the stipend and such are included in our amendments. This is parallel to the positions of editors of our society journals. Second, we are revising, or we're proposing to revise the terms for 4 positions: secretary, secretary-elect, treasurer, and treasurer-elect. And that is so that we have a 2-year term for each of those positions. 2 years secretary-elect, then that person becomes secretary for 2 years. Also for treasurer, to have a treasurer-elect for 2 years and then serve a position as treasurer for 2 years. And this is for a few reasons. One is because these jobs are actually quite large jobs. These are uncompensated volunteer positions, and the workload is pretty heavy. And so by distributing that workload across 2 people always, then that should offer us a better chance to be able to do this work well. Also, it gives the person in the elect position a longer period of learning to be able to have a smoother transition into the position. Third, these bylaws amendments will include more inclusive language. There's a number of places in our current bylaws that use gendered pronouns that we are altering to be more inclusive. And then fourth, we're cleaning up a lot of inconsistencies, some typos, some older language, just to have a more streamlined set of bylaws. Also, in addition to the SICB-wide Constitution and bylaws amendments, 6 divisions are also revising their bylaws, mostly along the same principles that I just described. Some divisions are proposing some more substantive changes, but many are correcting errors, updating language, and so on. And so our goal for all of this is to have all of these amendments proposals posted on our website in the first week of July. And then voting on most of these will occur during the month of August. For some divisions, there's a 60-day notice period that's required before amendments can be voted on, and so those will be voted on in September. So you'll be getting emails announcing these specific language for the amendments for your consideration, and then you will be seeing ballots coming your way in August and September. Not sure if there's any questions or if we'd rather wait and do those at the end, Melina.
Brett, are you seeing anything in the?
We have one comment. It was actually for the previous section, but I'll read that out. It's from Patrice Connors. It says, comment so far, thank you for holding this forum. Loving the transparency and updates. Also, thank you, Jake, for the program update. All sounds great to me. So that's encouraging. And if you have additional questions, like I said, please type them in as they occur to you. We'll get to them.
Thank you. To hear the comments. All right, thanks, Michelle. That's great. Molly, I'm handing over to you. And did you want to share your screen? I'm not sure if Brett has set up the capabilities yet.
Yep,
I would love to give this group a bit of a sneak peek if possible.
Great.
Figure out how that works.
There you go.
You're seeing yourself right now? All right. There we go. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So this is a sneak peek of the new SICB website, which is rolling out within weeks, shortly. It's been, we've been working on it for a long time. A few major things I want to say about it. One is that it's going to look a lot better. It's going to have a more updated look. You're seeing just sort of the top slider right now. In a minute, I will move around a little bit in it so that you can see. It's going to be a lot more mobile friendly, which was a big limitation with our existing website, is that it didn't work that well. We have reorganized some of the information, but pretty much everything that was on the old website is being ported over to the new website. So we're not losing things. We've all been working really hard on this for months and months and months to try to figure out how to make the transition to simplify the view, yet not lose things. So as we roll out the new website, one thing I'm going to be doing is making a bit of an overview video talking you through where to find the things that you're going to want to find on the new website, although I'm also happy to answer questions now. The other thing to emphasize is that the functionality should feel the same. So you're still going to be able to do the same things on the new website. In fact, for example, for abstract submission, we're actually using the same thing that the SICB webmaster has built. So we'll actually be doing abstract submission the same way, but it's just going to have the look of the new website. So we should be able to retain the functionality that we're used to, but with a new look and maybe easier to navigate. So we spent a lot of time thinking, for example, about these headings that are up here. And I'm just going to give a very brief tour and then maybe pause for questions. But a lot of those of you who come to the SICB website for information about SICB or its governance, its committees, sort of the leadership structure, a lot of that information is under About. And so under About, you can find SICB's mission and history, code of conduct, governance, which is basically the structure of how SICB is run, awards, and then membership. And that's where you go to find the member directory, which I know a lot of folks use. The next item is DEIJ. This is stands for, as most of you I think know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. This is a new content area that was missing from the old website, and we really wanted the new website to represent SICB's increased focus on this issue and commitment to do better, learn, and better reflect the diversity and better include all the awesome science that's going on. And so that is new content that should be rolling out with the new website, and we're working on that right now. There'll be a meetings page. There'll be a page, an area just for students that has career information, jobs, etc. And then I've worked with many divisions. So if we go to the divisions, I'm just going to tap on that one, and you'll see there's an image for each division, and then you can go to that division and visit it. Same thing for committees. There'll be a list of committees and then a way to get there, and then a resources area to find out, and jobs and fellowships is also there, awards, etc. I'm going to go back to the main page. And if you scroll down, we have our journals featured prominently. Forgive that it says blog. It shouldn't. It's a link to the real journal, not the blog about the journal. That is an edit that they're making right now. And then some links about membership, place for news. This will be populated by updates on the journal and also SICB student journalism articles, other types of updates. And then we'll be able to see social media feeds right on the website. And then also individual divisions that have social media will also have a feed for their division Twitter tag right on their division page. So divisions that don't have a Twitter yet, maybe you should think about having one, and we can add it right to the website. All right, I can't see any of you, but I'm going to leave this up maybe right now and see if there are any questions about the website.
We don't have any yet.
Okay.
We'll, yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you, Molly. This is so exciting, and it's hard to express how much work these projects are and how much you and so many others have put into it. I know you've had a great committee and oh, Brett's put a lot of work into. Is that what you're raising your hand?
Oh,
He
no, that's not
has.
what I was saying. No,
I'm just kidding.
I was, my hand was up because we have some questions now.
Okay.
I wasn't seeking recognition on that. Molly's been carrying the torch on this.
I was assuming it was a question. So please go ahead.
I will say before we hear questions, I will say that there are a lot of people that have fed into this process. And this is also a work in process. One thing I didn't mention, one of the reasons to do this is that the whole thing is going to be easier to edit and easier to maintain now. So we're going to roll out the best version that we can roll out, and then we're going to fix whatever's wrong with it. So it's going to be a living
Right.
website. It's going to be a work in progress. So be patient with us, but also please let us know if it's not working or something's wrong, because you know we're going to be learning this, but at the same time as everybody else.
Yes, for sure. If we decide to wait until it's absolutely perfect, it'll be released in about 100 years. So,
Yeah.
so our first question's from Marion Porter. It says, "What about ERC instead of students? It seems like that menu has info for early career researchers also."
Yeah, we discussed this, and we did decide to stick with the students tab, although I think that is a good point and the conversation should continue. But at least where we landed was that SICB is a very student-friendly meeting, and it was important to have a header item for students. But and that top bar, you can only fit so many things up there.
Right.
However, I think it's true that SICB also has a focus on supporting early career scientists. And so I think it would be tough to include, I don't want to change the name to early career, and it would be tough to add another one, but happy to have the conversation, and suggestions for how to maybe emphasize resources for that group would be very, very welcome.
We were also concerned that students may not realize that if we use the term early career researchers, they may not realize that that applies to them. And so we stuck with students to be very clear to students, but now
Yeah.
it may lose something on the other side.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, that's right. I remember that was a big point.
Our next question is from Jeff Olberding. It says, "Love the addition of a DEIJ tab. Thank you for the acknowledgement of Pride Month on the current SICB homepage. Very glad to see support from the society on these things." So this is great.
And I do want to give a shout out particularly to Ulrika Muller and Sam Sharp, really who provided the really awesome resource list that we're able to put up there for Pride. And so I'm just so appreciative of the SICB community and their willingness to share.
That's it for the questions so far, although I'll put my hand up if more come in.
Great. Any other officers on the call want to, anything to add? Good. So so again, we will, we as officers meet every week, basically, sometimes multiple times a week, actually often multiple times a week. And always love to get input. If input comes to us, we talk about it at our meetings. So please do feel free to reach out to any of us. We're happy to have conversations or to get additional input. Transparency is very important, and we are trying to do a lot this year. So as I said, we will have another forum. Probably Jake and I were talking about maybe right before the end of abstract submissions in case questions come up there. Another one in the fall. But if you can think of any other ways that we could get messages out to the community, we would love to hear that too. Or places where we may be missing the mark or could do something that we haven't yet thought of. Yeah, we have such a great team beyond this small group with the executive committee, the divisional officers, the editors, and everyone too. So just to any of you who are on or people who are in different, of course, all of us are in different divisions. Thanks to that leadership as well for everything that they have contributed as we sort of put the meeting together and think about other SICB business. It's been a lot. Great. Well, if there aren't any questions, more questions, we can.
Nope, we're good.
We're
clear.
All right. Great. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great end of June and July too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your
Bye.
8 minutes that you got back too. Bye, everybody.
Maybe I don't know.